All right, Ben, we're live, dude.
Right on. I'm always alive, Tom.
You're always alive. How you
Yes,
doing?
sir. Good. Downstairs, man. Kicking it.
Yeah,
What are you doing up there?
kicking it.
Sweet.
I just got notified that we're answering some recovery questions, Ben.
Nice.
So I'm thinking Fridays at 1 o'clock is when we can do our lives. What do you think?
I am down for Friday at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
Let's keep it real. I'll
Okay.
be out next Friday. Or is it the Friday after?
For your bodybuilding show.
Yes, sir.
Hey, there's two people watching.
You know what, though, actually? If we're doing it like this, I could technically still probably do it.
Well, yeah. I mean, technology these days, Ben.
Yes, sir. That's why we got you.
So Fridays at 1 o'clock, we're going to be going live. So everybody knows Friday at 1, mark it in your calendars. That's at least for now until things change. I'm busy. I have gymnastics going on every night of the week. Not every night, 3 nights out of the week. Not gymnastics for myself, gymnastics for my son. And I know, Ben, you're busy too. So, right.
I'd like to see you do a cartwheel, Tom. Let's let's see it live right now. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, I can't. I never could do a cartwheel, actually.
I got that feeling.
Can you do one?
Yeah,
No, you can't.
definitely.
Um, all right. So, what the live's going to be dedicated to basically Fridays at 1, we're going to take questions throughout the week and we're going to pick those questions and we're going to talk about them Fridays at 1. So, you can send all your questions to info at realrecoverytalk.com. As a matter of fact, let me do something right now. Um, yes, right here. Info. See it at the bottom. Info at realrecoverytalk.com. You can send your questions there. And what will happen at that point, Ben and I will get them and we will answer them, at least from our perspective, our opinions, and you can take them or leave them. But I think for the most part, our opinions are pretty solid, wouldn't you say, Ben?
Based off experiences, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
There's not much we haven't experienced. I got people knocking on my door, Tom.
Well, you're going to have to tell them they have to wait, Ben.
Okay. So I'm a people pleaser, though, Tom. How do I? Oh, it's just Alex. Who's that? We are live. Real
Ben,
recovery
you need to
talk.
change your angle, Ben. You give yourself like a triple chin when you have the camera underneath. So, okay, couple questions that we got. The first one is going to be how to manage pain whenever you're in recovery. Ben, how do you manage pain when you're in
Physical pain?
recovery? Yeah, physical pain. We
Oh,
just talked about this actually, and the episode hasn't gone live yet. Um, this coming Sunday, we have an episode coming out with Jared Flash Gordon, the UFC fighter, and he's got an interesting take on it. But curious to see what your thoughts are. How do you handle pain if you get hurt and you require pain meds? What do you do?
it's a tough question, and I get this all the time. In fact, I got this question yesterday. I got a phone call at about 1 o'clock yesterday from a gentleman that's part of my home group. We're super supports for each other. He's a little newer in recovery, and he told me he was on the way to the dentist, and he had already made the mental decision that he was going to be in pain, and he was going to need pain medications. Now the thing is it's a tough question in the respect that how do you measure pain? And I think is if we know that we're alcoholics and drug addicts, we really, really have to be honest with ourselves, honest with others too. And as far as managing the pain, that the first step I take is running it by other people. It's actually, let me tell you this too. I have another sponsee who literally just had hernia surgery this week. Same kind of thing. This has been definitely a pattern. And another friend of mine who has about a decade of sobriety also had some major mouth surgery done about 3 weeks ago and told me that he took some pain medication and was having the obsession, the phenomenon of craving as a result. And he took it as prescribed, and that's with, again, a decade of recovery. And I think it just comes down to being honest with yourself, being honest with others. And the reality of the situation is this part is my opinion, but we very often tell ourselves ahead of time that we're going to need pain medication. And for myself, I have a lot of lower back pain. And as part of my recovery process, and this is why like Tom and I are so big about the physical aspect, I have really adjusted my life and the exercise I do, all that stuff as a result, and trying to strengthen my lower back in ways that are appropriate. I can't do deadlifts. I don't do anything where I bend over. I don't do good mornings, back extensions. I can't even leg press or squat, but I do things where I keep my trunk, stable. Um, so with that being said, it's I think we really need to put a lot of effort into physically making ourselves optimal as well.
Yeah.
And let's be going back again to my opinion, I think a lot of addicts and alcoholics have themselves convinced that they're going to be in pain before they're actually in pain if it's a surgery thing. But at the same time, it's if you do have to take pain medication, I definitely recommend bringing other people into the process.
Yeah. I lost you there for a second. Ben, you're cutting in and out.
I saw that Billy was texting me, so did you lose me?
No, you're back.
I can't look at my text and do this at the same time.
No, you cannot.
Oh, some reason
Yes.
my screen's black.
All right. Well, you just fix that, and then I'll talk. So, this is where I'm grateful that I'm an alcoholic, and I'll explain why. I took one opiate my whole entire life, and it was whenever I had a surgery when I was really young. So my answer to this is going to be a little bit different in the sense of if you're an alcoholic, I suppose, and alcohol was your drug of choice, like it was mine. To me, I don't think it's as big of a deal taking pain meds if you rightfully so if they're justified through if you had surgery or whatever the case is. I think alcoholics can probably get away with it a lot easier than somebody that was addicted to heroin or opiates or fentanyl or whatever the case. So, again, another reason why I'm fortunate, I think, that alcohol was my true drug of choice. I know we hear a lot of times, drug addicts in and of themselves. Yes, you are alcoholic as well. Just like I say, I'm a drug addict. I consider alcohol a drug, but I was also addicted to cocaine and benzos. But as far as pain meds, if you're alcoholic, I think you have a little bit more margin to work with. Now, for the opiate addicts, the people that, spent a lot of time using opiates, injecting it, whatever the case is, I think it's a lot more slippery of a slope for you, unfortunately. And I think it needs to be, like Ben, you just said, I think it needs to be mentioned. You need to tell people what's going on.
Let me bring up an example of that. I know she won't mind. One of our best friends, and she used to work with us at Rock. She has since relocated to Massachusetts to start a family. Our friend Renee, remember she was working with us? She had neck surgery. She had a very serious neck surgery, and I remember that legitimately she needed to take opiate pain medication post surgery. And if I'm not mistaken, this was a few years ago. She did for about a month, maybe a month and a half. And fortunately for her, her now husband is also in recovery. They both had substantial recovery time at that time as well. So he has a really good backbone and foundation in recovery and understanding it, where he was hanging on to her medication for her and giving it to her. And there was a point where she shared with me that he called her out because she went from, you know how it says take every 4 to 6 hours. At first she was taking it every 6, and then all of a sudden every 4. She's like,
Right.
hey, I need that. And he said he mentioned something to her, and she brought it up and actually got very defensive. And this is where having a good recovery foundation comes in. And she was able to take a step back from an inventory process and say, hey, why am I being defensive? And it wasn't in that moment, but it took a little bit of reflection. She told me, but being able to sit back and say, wow, I am actually getting defensive. Why is it that I am getting feisty over this, so to speak? And took a step back and then discontinued taking them from that point on. I mean, I think it's again like a legitimate case, neck surgery, very invasive. She was in a neck brace for how long? 3 months, I think, 4 months. It was a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
Could not move her neck at all. So obviously legitimate. Now that's where inviting people into the process is so important. A guy like me, I'll speak for myself. I'm afraid to death where there's no such thing as for me even taking 2 Vicodin and not craving more. I take 2 Vicodin, I instantly feel that energy, that oomph, and I'm gonna have an obsession of the minds. It's just who I am. It's built in, and I know that about myself. So maybe for myself, I'm more cautious. I kind of explain it to people. For me, I better be darn well unconscious in an ambulance if you're going to give me an opiate. Like that's how concerned I am about it. It's I'd really be up against it. So it's a huge fear for me. It's dealing with pain. That they call them pain pills because they bring pain in addition. So at least for
Yeah.
the addict.
I would say too for alcoholics, it's kind of, it's one of those things that like I have friends of mine that are alcoholic that, I go on the fishing trip every year and the guy that I go with, he's been sober over 20 years, 21 years now. And he's gotten himself in a position to where if alcohol is around, he doesn't mind being around alcohol at all. In fact, he doesn't shy away from it. But he has made the conscious decision to not reach into a cooler and grab a beer out of a cooler if somebody asks, "Hey, can you grab me a beer?" or whatever the case is. He won't touch it. And that's a decision that he's made for himself. And I think that it's wise for him. Um, to where me, I'm the opposite. I don't care. Like if you ask me to grab you a beer and the cooler is next to me, I'll grab you a beer and hand it to you. I bring that up because I think it's individualized in a sense. And he's got 21 years. We both have 13 years plus. And it's just one of those things that there's no rule book when it comes to taking pain medication and being in recovery. There's just not. You have to know yourself well enough. You have to be able to hold yourself accountable well enough. You have to kind of know when you're pushing the boundaries. Like, Renee, she had enough insight to be able to look at that and say, okay, something's going on here. And I think that comes with time. That comes with time. And so the best thing that you can do if you are undergoing some sort of surgery or you have some sort of uh you know chronic pain going on for whatever reason, exhaust all avenues first, whether that's Tylenol, ibuprofen, whatever. I know there's a lot of non-narcotic pain management out there, but if it means that you have to take pain meds, you have to do it in a smart way. I mean, I knew a guy that chopped his finger off and didn't take any pain meds. it was the craziest thing. Chopped his finger off and he picked his finger up off the ground and put it in a Ziploc bag of ice and bicycled his way to the hospital, and the finger died. he couldn't even get the finger reattached, but he didn't take any pain meds. You know, I don't know. You put me in that position, I feel like I may need to, Ben.
Well, the reality of the situation is, and I think we talked about this on the podcast that we're releasing Sunday, is we've had a ton of clients come to Rock, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be opiates. I've heard this with like Adderall. Oh, my ADHD is so bad that I'm definitely going to need it when I leave here. My anxiety is so bad that I'm definitely going to end up going back on it, Xanax, when I get out of here. And the same thing goes with opiate pain medication. I can't tell you how many cases you get them on the pre-screen call prior to them arriving to detox or us for treatment, and I had back surgery 15 years ago. I'm absolutely going to need this opiate pain medication. And you get them sober enough, you get them enough insight, you get them enough lifestyle change as far as exercise, and all of a sudden that same very person that was 1,000% convinced that they were going to need opiate pain medication and learn how to control it, turns out they didn't need it at all.
Right.
And that is the case. If I had to put a number on it, I would say probably 99% of the time. I'm not exaggerating. When somebody tells me that, very, 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 very rarely do they truly need pain medication. And in the rare cases that we've seen that, Tom, I'm not going to mention names because it's a past client, but we did have a past veteran who had some significant chronic pain. I would quantify this as legitimate without a doubt. But there's also other medication alternatives nowadays, which this can be to some people in recovery a gray area. But I also personally, while I wouldn't take it myself for my recovery purposes, it can be looked at like as a gray area. But for instance, like medications like gabapentin, it's more of a nerve pain, and they use it in detox for all kinds of stuff, opiates, relief as far as anxiety, etc. It's got some secondary off-label uses as well. But there are other medications out there, such as gabapentin, that are a lesser of two evils, in my opinion. If something has to be taken, there's always other options to look at first. Again, I want to reiterate my whole point. I've made the decision for myself. I better be unconscious if somebody's putting an opiate in my body, because I know the consequences that I will pay mentally for feeling any kind of opiate in my brain. But there's legitimate cases out there where, I mean, who's to say in the future I don't get hit by a truck crossing the road and maybe need to have opiate pain medication? God, I hope that's not the case. But I'm going to take all my knowledge, all my sober support, and apply all of it to truly be as honest with myself as I can.
Well put, Ben.
I hope I don't get hit by a bus.
Yeah. Well, if you don't walk out into the middle of the street, you probably won't. Okay. Remember a few weeks back, I was referencing a question from a lady in Australia.
I do recall. I don't remember the question.
Okay, so I'm not going to read the whole email, but the lady, you'll know who you are. She's in Australia, and she asked us to answer this question in particular. Does the meth addict know deep down that we aren't bad people? He accuses me of things that I haven't done. For him to bring up that I can't have kids and threw it in my face, does he know he's saying hurtful things? And it goes, there's more to it, but in a nutshell, that's the question. And my answer to this is that generally, people that are suffering from addiction and they're active in their addiction, it's not whether or not they know that you're not a bad person. It's just that they are not seeing life through realistic a realistic lens, you know. Obviously this question is very broad. I don't know the dynamic of the relationship between you guys. If you are a nice person and you believe that you are a nice person, and he for whatever reason doesn't believe that you are a nice person, and you're the one not addicted to drugs and he is the one addicted to drugs, then what does it matter? um I would challenge you to really look at, is this a relationship that you want to be in? Is this a relationship that is worth being in given the circumstances? Um, and if he is a nice person and he's addicted to drugs and he's just saying things and doing things that are out of character for him, you have to take that into consideration and try and maybe get this person the help that he needs. You can't judge a person's character based off of what you see when they're active in their addiction. My opinion. Ben, do you agree with that?
I do, and I'll say this: two things, and this is across the board. You can't assume motives. Is number one. You have no idea why somebody does something or doesn't do something. The other part to this is you, especially when you're dealing with somebody in active addiction, you can't personalize it either. It's they refer to it, and this is the generic. It's cunning, baffling, powerful. Tom, I believe in my heart, especially now coming up with 13 years of sobriety, that deep down inside I'm a good person. I have good morals, I have good ethics, principles, values, etc. In my active addiction, did I do things way outside of that character? Absolutely, I did. Am I responsible for those things that I did? Yes, I am. I don't use my drugs and alcohol as a cop out for my past behavior. I can forgive myself for it, so to speak. However, I have to always own my actions, whether or not I was under a substance or not, and I'm only speaking for myself. Again, I can't speak to the individual using the meth. That's for them to decide their own side of the street. Because at the end of the day, I gotta come to the realization. Again, I'm powerless over this person's addiction. The thought that they are going to change their behavior for me because they love me, I'm just going to be very frank with you that methamphetamine and other drugs are so powerful that any other human being is secondary to that addiction. It just is what it is. Now,
Right.
do we on the back end when we get clean and sober see that? And that's why a big part of, for instance, 12 steps in therapy is cleaning up your side of the street. Yes, we go back as people in recovery and we do our best to right our wrongs. Um, I don't want to get too crazy into it, but we've done past episodes on amends, for instance. And the amends formula, as I was taught, is hey, here's what I did to you. Here's what I'll try to do in the future. Did I leave anything out? And how do you want me to make it right? However, somebody has to be in that mind space and in that place in their recovery for somebody to be having the expectation of waiting for an amends, you might be waiting forever and never get it. So you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. Expectations are prepaid resentments. So don't personalize it, and you can't assume motives. We're up against methamphetamine in this question.
I like how you put that, Ben. I feel like you put it better than I did.
I
I
did
think
a
it's
lot
a
of tough talk.
mustache. Ben, I must ask you a question.
Go for it.
Okay, last question. Hang on. Again, you know, you'll know who you are. My son has done things to the family that I cannot comprehend. Are there things that I should be doing better as a parent to help him understand the negative things that he has done within the family? Essentially, is the question. Um, I don't know how this or what this means. I suppose I'm assuming. Are you asking if it's okay if you bring up all the negative stuff that your son has done to the family? And I would say no. I would say he probably maybe he might not know, But what's the motive? What's the motive behind bringing this up? Ben, your screen's black again. What's the motive behind bringing this up? What's the end game? What are you trying to accomplish by bringing this stuff up? Because it's been our experience that it doesn't help. It doesn't do anything. It 99% of the time, what I would say is, if in fact this is something that you want to do, or you feel this strong pull to bring up the negative things that your loved one has done, it's less about them, it's more about you. It's less about letting them know, hey, these are the things that you did, and I want you to know what you did. I think it's more about, you will gain the satisfaction knowing that you told them the things that they did. It will make you feel better. And I have no reason to give or to think that bringing these things up do any good. Now, are there certain situations in which bringing these things up could be beneficial? Yeah. And I suppose in one instance, it would be okay if you're facilitating, or if somebody is facilitating an intervention. And through this intervention, your loved one is reluctant to going to treatment. And it's just gotten to the point where, you've tried every other tactic. Okay. And now you want to bring up the fact that, he sold your grandmother's wedding ring for crack. Okay, that's fine. I mean, you could bring it up. Again, I don't think it'll do much. I don't think it will change much. It's been our experience through interventions and stuff, and communication in general when it comes to addicts, is to be non-combative. We're not talking at you, we're conversing with you. We want to have a conversation with you about what's going on, and help in any way that we can. And if you go into a conversation, or you feel the draw or the need to want to throw this stuff back at them, or tell them and let them sit in it, it's unhealthy. It doesn't do anything. I wouldn't recommend it. What do you think, Ben?
So I don't know if you could tell, but Google called my line and it cut out during the question. But I believe I recall the question, and I'm
No,
also
I couldn't tell, but yeah.
listening to you, and I know where this is going and picked up on it. But remember, at the end of the day, again, when you're dealing with active addiction, you're dealing with somebody who's emotionally dysregulated. Chances are they're not going to be able to comprehend the pain that you put them through, because they're in so much pain themselves. We're selfish and self-centered when we're in our active addiction. What matters the most to us is our pain. My pain matters the most. So if you're trying to get somebody to see their side of the street, chances are they're so focused on themselves and how they're feeling, and trying to regulate that with drugs and alcohol, that they're not going to comprehend what you're saying anyway, if that makes sense. It's like talking to a brick wall, so to speak. And it may also harm a future opportunity to bring that stuff up. For instance, at Rock Recovery Center, we do the family weekend, and part of that is the impact letters. There is a major difference between bringing something up in the very beginning stages to try and motivate them. But I'm with Tom again. You're probably trying to make yourself feel better. Ha ha, I told you. Versus when somebody's got 30, 60, 90 days of sobriety under their belt, working a program with a therapist, and these impact letters get written. The reason for the communication, the motive behind the communication, is that to come to a solution, not for relief of pain for self. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but well, yep.
So, and that, let me add one more thing to that too. Allowing somebody to have their own aha moment has way more value. If I recognize on my own how I hurt my family and bring it up to them, it matters more than them telling me. It has more of an impact on me and my progress as somebody entering recovery. Now, again, we just talked about it 2 seconds ago, the amends formula. it covers that again where, Tom, here's what I did to you. Tom, did I leave anything out? When I make the approach and I ask you if I left anything out, any ways that I harmed you, that's your opportunity, because I'm open-minded and I'm actually inquiring as the person recovering. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm seeking that information because now I want to be part of the solution. I'm not in my active addiction and essentially going head to head with the drug addict is futile. And we know that here at Rock too. We have situations where as clinicians, we have to take a step back and say, hey, going head to head with this person, whether we're right or not, is going to be fruitless because they're not going to hear it right now. And it is our job to recognize that. And it's so much of the time, it's about the appropriate time to bring it up. Look at the timeline. Is it appropriate right now? And what are the motives behind bringing it up? Those are the two key points.
Very well put, Ben. Very well put.
I like these questions.
Fernando is on. Fernando dropped my name to Mind Pump, Ben, just to let you know.
Solid.
Hey, Fernando.
What's happening, Fernando?
That's it for questions, Ben. Unless, Fernando, you have one. We got time for one more. We've been on here 31 minutes. Fernando, just so you know, we're going to be coming on every Friday at 1 o'clock. Ben, you there? Guess not. Okay. Right here, live stream. This is going to be the thumbnail. You'll see this pop up. That's my big ugly mug right there. You look for that. That's going to be the thumbnail for the live stream every week. And please send your questions. I don't care what questions they are, so as long as they make some sort of relative sense to addiction, to recovery, it doesn't matter. Send anything. If you have personal questions for yourself, or even questions about Ben and I are open books. I'll tell you that. Well, there's nothing for the most part. I mean, I don't think there's anything I won't answer.
I'm fairly confident that if you ask me, I will talk about it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Ben, we need to figure out your internet situation. So we're going to wrap this up. Thank you for joining this live, and we'll see you next week. Later.